Now let's move on quickly. The great American statesman Benjamin Franklin once said that an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. But the situation in the country indicates that university students are no longer passionate about the prospect of a degree. Economic hardship is biting hard and affecting their concentration as they take up menial jobs in order to survive and contribute to the finances their parents can afford. Apart from transportation fares, which have doubled, university students complain of an increase in charges across campuses, and they now have to acquire skills and do menial jobs to survive. The result is that their academic activities will suffer the consequences. Adoye.
Well, I think viewed from a general perspective, there is nothing wrong for students, university students, to augment their living if there's one or two things they can do. In fact, if you, many people go to US, Britain to attend universities. They also work in order to be able to meet up their, their needs. But in our case, I think it's slightly different because you have a situation where most of these students, in fact, if you talk to some of them, they are even responsible for feeding their parents. Apart from paying school fees. So you have somebody at the age of 19, he's already have responsibilities of some 5, 6 people, just a student. Or like in UK, where, okay, if you are working, you are working for to augment your, other needs and all. So I think the situation is terrible. A lot of parents cannot afford to pay school fees of their children, even in public universities, where the cost is a bit relatively affordable, So it is forcing a lot of our students to go outside the box, in order to survive. And it's not just going doing manual jobs, they also find themselves going to social, commercial sex work, turning themselves to commercial sex workers in order to be able to live. So I think that is where the problem becomes a little bit different from what the standard you have in other parts of the country. Because university education is not a place where you should go and now devote all your time to working as an engineer, because it's going to really divert your attention from your focal point, which is education. So I think it's a reflection of the downturn in the economy, which has forced so many students, to resort into so many means to survive. And sometimes it also affects their commitment to the educational curriculum. So I think it's something that we need to look for how we are going to address this problem, especially in public schools. Because though we have so many universities in Nigeria, I think we have about 272 now. But in terms of the number of admissions that we have every day, every year, a lot of Nigerians cannot access, the university system. And I think it has to do with the fact that we have so many universities, but in terms of quality university, quality standard universities, they are not there. Look at South Africa, for instance. The biggest university in that country, University of South Africa, has 400,000 students with about 30 campuses, So, but we have so many private universities that when you go there, they're just glorified, secondary school, and they are very expensive. That most people cannot afford them. Private universities where we are paying about 2 million, 3 million. How many people can afford that? So public universities that are even affordable, the competition is too much. To the extent that if you don't know people, you may not be able to get the particular course that you really bid for. So I think it's a crisis of the Nigerian economic, it's a reflection of the economic crisis, and I hope we can find a way out, maybe in terms of this loan that has just been introduced by the federal government, so that the people that actually deserve this loan will be the end users, the beneficiary of the system.
Thank you. What's your perspective?
Yes, I think that just as Wale said, in those days, some of us combined academic work with a bit of business so that we can make a little more money. It was fun, really. I was a photographer. If we are going to do maybe English Students Week or something, they will call me, I will go and snap pictures, and I will print those pictures and give them. And I was making money on the sidelines. I could make, for example, 2 times my weekly allowance in 1 week. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. For some students, even back then, they had to combine academic work with driving taxis just so that they can make ends meet. Governor Zulum, for example, to pay his way through the University of Ibadan, where he graduated as an engineer, he had to drive Kabu. From the money he made, he was able to pay his school fees. Sometimes your parents pay school fees, but you also need to buy things. You need to buy books. You are an accounting student, for example, you need to buy books and all that. You don't want to keep going back to them to ask for money for this and for that. So you tried your best to also augment the money made available to you. But it is much more difficult now. Some of the things I see now, barefaced prostitution that people call runs. It was there during our time, but not this rampant. In fact, they are about to literally legalize it now. Because when you say somebody is involved in runs, it doesn't attract the kind of anger that in the past it will have attracted. It's like they now see it, it's not a big deal, So that is one. But this particular story is talking about students who have resorted to making soaps, making liquid soap, liquid detergent, make air for their colleagues in school, just to make ends meet. Some of them working part-time as in a cyber cafe and doing other things like side hustle, what we also call side hustle. I know a student, for example, who was also doing POS business. He was doing POS, so these days parents will send money and the students, in trying to withdraw what has been sent to them, trying to access the cash, they have to use POS. That's why POS business is thriving on campuses. If you go to Unilag, you go even to LASU. When I went to LASU, there's a whole place where they sit. People go to them. So there are students who are doing that. There is a girl who used to be in my choir who is into confectionery making. That is sweets, cakes, and all that. That's what she does. She has even registered a business as a student. So if a student has a bad day, she will bake cake for them. She's already making money, making little money. Yes, so that at the end of the day, you just use whatever you make to augment what your parents are able to give you. These days, parents struggle. Some of the girls who have resorted to runs or prostitution, if we are to call it by its real name, it was because they were tired of going to their parents, and their parents would tell them stories. So some of them just decided that, well, let me try and solve my problem by myself. Some students actually sponsor themselves through school because the cost of maintaining students, paying school fees, especially in a public university, is not the big deal. The big deal is feeding that student. Feeding that student. The average student, even a young one, if he's to eat good food, there's no way you won't spend 30,000 naira per week. I don't need to appeal to them. They are happy to get Gary when they are going to school, and I'll put granulated sugar. When we were growing up, granulated sugar was not common. It was the cubes. Granulated sugar, I think I saw granulated sugar for the first time around 1980. Yes, around late 79, 1980. It was St. Louis in cubes that we were getting. But today you could actually mix that Ijebu gari, mix it with granulated sugar, and it's ready to serve for the children. So before you go to eat, the strategy is first load your belly a little bit with the gari and the granules. Then go and eat a little. That will bring it here for you. So it's a strategy so that they give you 30,000. Maybe that should be enough for you for the week. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And if these children will not take to cultism, will not take to drugs, will not take to armed robbery, whatever they are doing as a side hustle is allowed. It's legitimate.
But Adeoye, are there consequences, I mean, on the kinds of graduates we churn out going forward?
Well, the consequences in terms of the quality of graduates we produce in our universities is a product of so many factors. So the idea of students not, putting enough time to learning is just an aspect of it. But I think broadly there are so many factors that are responsible for the quality of corruption is there, leadership is there, funding of universities is there. For instance, University of Ibadan, I think up to the 80s, hardly can you do a report in any university all over the world without making reference to journals produced at the University of Ibadan. Well, at that time, there was University of Ibadan Press, the quality of academic performance, UNNABU. You can't compare that with what we have today. I think we stopped producing a good, maybe since 1976, when the second set, University of Ilorin, Ibadan. Go and look at those universities, compare with what we are building now. You can't compare them. The first generation, the second generation. When you enter University of Benin, University of Ilorin, you think they are in a huge city. The founding fathers made provision for almost everything, unlike the kind of mushroom universities we are building these days. Infrastructure, facilities, roads. Go to some universities, you see Okada. You see students living, you go to their toilets. How will people be able to learn in this environment? So it's a whole lot of factors. That's why when you graduate from Nigeria, if you go abroad, they still ask you to come and take some exams because they doubt your credentials, which was not like that in the past years.
All of these are big distractions.
Yeah.
For students, normally should be able to focus on academic work, but the desire to survive in a very difficult economic environment has prompted students to focus more on other things rather than the academic work. And it's a big distraction. And I can tell you, students who ordinarily should have scored a 2-1 or first class, when they are distracted in this way and they are bothered about how to survive and stay afloat, honestly, they won't be able to make the grade.
I agree with you, Vicky. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to the final topic for today. The judgment